Good habits beget good results in your life, right? Of course. Well, today I want to talk about a particular habit that is doing a lot of damage in your life and you don't even know it. And that habit is the habit of self-talk, the way you explain things and the way you talk to yourself. Okay, so why do I want to talk about self-talk today? Well, because I think it's a very underestimated part of feeling good in our life and everyday life. We've all heard, oh, don't be mean to yourself, don't talk to yourself that way. But really, if you think about it, you talk to yourself in ways that you would not talk to other people, particularly people that you love. You say things to yourself that you wouldn't say to your mother, usually. You say things to yourself that you wouldn't say to your father or to a spouse, or if you're a parent, to your children. I'm having a hard time understanding why it's okay to say things to yourself that you would never, ever dare say to other people. You catching my drift? Now, why is self-talk so important? Well, it's so important because there's a biological consequence to everything we think. There is a biological consequence to everything you think. What does that mean? Well, if you look at the brain is made up of neurons. Neurons are basically cells that charge up. They send signals, an electrical signal, through your brain, like a circuit, like a wire. Think of it like an electrical wire. And every time you have a thought, you send a signal down a certain pathway. For instance, if you have the thought, I'm a dummy, what you're doing is you are charging up that pathway in your brain. Neurons are electrical. They communicate via electricity. And every time you commit yourself to making a thought, what you're doing is you're committing electricity to that pathway. Why is that important? That's important neurologically because the more you do it, the easier it gets to keep doing it. So what happens at the biological level is when you have a thought repeatedly, I am a dummy, for instance, you have that thought repeatedly and you keep doing it over and over and over and over. What happens is biologically, your brain believes that this is an important thing, so it tries to save that pathway. How does it save that pathway? It insulates it with something called myelin. So every time you charge that pathway in your brain, the neurons charge up and send a signal through your brain, I am a dummy. Every time you do that, your brain says, this must be important because they keep using this thought over and over again, so let's save it for later. So what does it do? It insulates via myelin, which you've probably heard of. Myelin is like the rubber that goes around an electrical wire. It protects us from being shocked. It protects us from having accidents. So the more you fire that pathway, the more myelinated it gets. The more myelinated it gets, the quicker the transmission of that message. Now you understand the biological basis of needing to change your thoughts. What you've been doing with that negative self-talk, I am a dummy, I am stupid, I'm worthless, I'm no good, I'll never be good at this. What you've been doing is firing pathways into your brain. And the more you do them, the more you do that, I should say, the more insulated that pathway gets. The more likely that pathway is going to stay there for a long time. And it's going to be easier in the future to keep firing that pathway. Now are you catching my drift? Why it's so important to monitor what you say to yourself? What I just described at the biological, at the neurological level, is the basis of learning. Myelination. Firing neural pathways and myelinating them, protecting them for future use. Self-talk is a habit that we learn and that we get really good or bad at. So when you keep firing these pathways over and over and over and over months, years, what happens is it becomes automatic and you don't even notice it anymore. You don't even notice the way you talk to yourself. Can you see how this might be a problem long term? When I talk to my clients individually, I notice a lot of things in our interactions. And one of the first things I try to point out is how they talk to themselves. They'll say things like, oh, you're going to think this is dumb, but, and then they'll proceed to speak about something. And I point that out to them. I point out that I didn't say anything. I'm listening. But your self-talk is such that you think that people are going to evaluate you in a bad way because that's what you do to yourself. So I try to point it out, and I try to point it out because awareness is the point at which we stop this pattern. So there is hope for you. If you want to change your self-talk, you have to start with being aware of what you are saying to yourself. Because research shows approximately 90 to 95% of what we think is just automatic. Just like that. We don't even notice we're doing it. So if we want to change it, let's start noticing how we speak to ourselves. And there's lots of ways to do that, and we can cover that in another video. But for today, what I want you to understand is there is a real biological consequence to the negative, self-deprecating way you talk about yourself. And if you want to feel better long-term in your life, we need to get that changed. I'm Dr. Leif Smith. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe. Please leave a comment. I love to interact with people. And I will see you in the next video.